How's it going, everyone? Lon here from Android Authority, and this is a phone that you may or may not have heard of. It's the R17 Pro from Oppo, and Oppo's been doing a lot of really cool and innovative stuff with their smartphones this year, and this is another one of those phones. And just like a lot of other Oppo phones, this phone will most likely not be coming to the US. But in the US, we have something that's pretty identical to this. It's the OnePlus 6T. It actually offers a lot of the same stuff as the R17 Pro. So if you want something that's pretty equivalent to this, the OnePlus 6T is gonna be your best bet. But the R17 Pro is sort of this high-end mid-range smartphone. It has a Snapdragon 710 processor, 8 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigabytes of internal storage. There's no micro SD card slot for expandable storage, but I think 128 gigabytes is going to be enough for most people. It also has a 3700 milliamp hour battery, and it's running ColorOS version 5.2 on top of Android 8.1 Oreo. Now, there are a handful of things that makes this phone really interesting. One of those things is the water drop or tear-shaped notch, and this is not the first time that we've seen Oppo use this particular style of notch, but I like this notch way better than any other notch on other smartphones for a few reasons. One, it's smaller. Two, it eats up a lot less of your screen. And three, it just visually looks more appealing. So even though I'm not that big of a fan of notches, I really don't mind this one that much at all. And the secret behind this notch is it only houses a front-facing camera, and then the other sensors like the proximity and light sensors are actually hidden underneath the display. And then the speaker or the earpiece is just this tiny little slit of a speaker grill that sits on the outer bezel above the notch. The screen itself is a 6.4-inch AMOLED panel, and it's really vibrant, really colorful, and of course you get those inky deep blacks that you sort of expect from an AMOLED screen. So it's a really good looking panel overall. I really have no complaints about it. The second thing that makes this phone really cool is the in-screen fingerprint sensor, and we're starting to see this technology crop up more and more on our smartphones, and it's definitely come a long way since we saw it back at like CES and MWC this year. And the in-screen fingerprint sensor on the R17 Pro, Oppo says it will unlock the phone in just 0.4 seconds, which is pretty fast, and it definitely does feel pretty quick, but it's still a step behind the traditional fingerprint sensor. I think the biggest thing for me here is just the overall consistency. It's fast for the most part, but then there's times where it ends up taking a full second or two to actually unlock. And not only do you feel it, but you also visually see it because the fingerprint sensor animation ends up happening more than once when it's trying to read your fingerprint. But I think like traditional fingerprint sensors, which got better and faster and more accurate over time, I think the same thing is going to happen with these in-screen fingerprint sensors as more OEMs start to adopt this technology. And I like the in-screen fingerprint sensor. It feels very futuristic, and it also makes the design of the phone look a lot cleaner. You don't have a physical fingerprint sensor on the front or the back. And the R17 Pro is already a really good looking phone. It's a very sleek phone, very curvy. It's really comfortable to hold in the hand. It also has really excellent build quality. It has Corning Gorilla Glass 6 on the front and back and metal rails on the sides. So it's a very high quality feeling phone. And I also just love the way this phone looks, especially in this fog gradient color. The way that it transitions from the purple to the blue is just absolutely incredible. I never really get tired of looking at it. This might remind you a lot of the twilight color on the Huawei P20 Pro, but I like Oppo's implementation a little bit better because it's not reflective, and because it's not reflective, it doesn't show fingerprints and smudges quite as easily. There's also no headphone jack on this phone, so if you care about headphone jacks, you might be a little bit disappointed in that, but it is what it is. This next one is gonna sound a little bit weird, but the battery on this phone is actually worth talking about because it's a little bit different from batteries on other smartphones. It actually has two batteries inside instead of just one, for a total of 3,700 milliamp hours. So it's two 1,850 milliamp hour batteries. And Oppo says the reasoning behind this is so that it can charge the phone faster and more efficiently. And this phone does support SuperVOOC flash charge, which gets the phone 40% in 10 minutes. And I actually tested this claim from a completely dead Oppo R17 Pro, and sure enough, after 10 minutes, I was at 40%. And I even took this test a couple of steps further, and after another 10 minutes, I was at 74%. and after 30 minutes, I was at 96%. So basically after about 30 minutes, you can get a completely charged R17 Pro, which is pretty impressive. It doesn't have wireless charging if you like wireless charging, but with Super VOOC flash charge being as fast as it is, I don't really care that much that it doesn't have wireless charging. The last thing that I want to talk about is the cameras, and this phone has 3 cameras on the back, but they may or may not be what you're expecting. The main camera is a 12 megapixel camera with 1.4 micron pixel size and optical image stabilization, and it also has a variable aperture of f1.5 and f2.4, a la Samsung Galaxy S9/Galaxy Note 9. The second sensor is a 20 megapixel camera, and this sensor is basically designed for creating these 3D portrait lighting effects on the rear camera. And it's a cool feature. I think it's a little gimmicky, to be honest, but it's meant to make your portrait mode photos look a little bit more artistic and professional. The third camera is not a wide angle or telephoto lens. It's probably not even a lens that you would even guess. It's actually a TOF or time of flight 3D camera. And this camera allows you to create 3D scans of objects or people. And it sort of reminded me a lot of the 3D creator app that we saw on Sony Xperia phones. And it sort of works pretty similarly. You just circle the phone around the object or person and it creates a 3D scan. But I didn't find this feature to be particularly useful. I don't know if I ever would. I think I would have much rather preferred a more traditional wide angle or telephoto lens. But as a camera itself, it does take really great photos. I was pretty impressed with the quality. It has excellent color reproduction, really great dynamic range, and the ultra night mode that's on this phone is pretty impressive. It does take a couple of seconds to process and take the image, but the results are actually pretty cool. So here's an image with the night mode turned off, and here's the image with the night mode turned on. And you can see there's a pretty big difference between the two. You get much more dynamic range and better highlight and shadow details when night mode is enabled, and you also just get a brighter image overall. The only downside to these photos is I think they over sharpen them a little bit to give the illusion of more detail, but otherwise I really like what this ultra night mode is capable of doing. So that's really it for the Oppo R17 Pro. I go much more in depth about it in my full written review. So if you guys want to see more camera samples, benchmark scores, screenshots, all that good stuff is linked down in the description below. So check that out. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Subscribe down below if you want to see more videos like this, and keep it tuned here to Android Authority. And I will talk to you guys in the next video.